intermediate one second. Need the beginner one. So this is the solution for the beginner, and let me refresh here. Okay. So what we are doing in this first dashboard, we are retrieving the jobs for just one keyword, which is hard-coded in the script, which is Tableau. The request was to bring at least 120 jobs. So I'm always bringing 120 jobs. And here I have just some KPIs with the fields provided by the API. So in my dashboard, we have a map, and we also have the list of states. If I click on a state, I can see the different cities, the company, the titles. I also incorporated a URL link that will bring you to the actual job posting. So that's the solution for the, dashboard for the first challenge. And how did I do this? So if we go back to the challenge, I gave a lot of steps on what was required. Obviously, we needed to have an API key, so we needed to go to the Job API, get the key, and then I have the instructions they gave us. This script here actually comes from the Jobble API. This is how to test the connection. So I'm giving here the step-by-step instructions. You need to set up your environment. You need to have TabPy. You need to run it or activate it by doing TabPy. Then you need to go into Tableau Desktop and ensure that you have all the fields, necessary fields, you know, in there, and make sure that you are connected into the Pi. So here I'm giving the high-level instructions how to get to these table extensions. As far as the code, let me switch here real quick to the code. Just 1 second. Looking at my okay, let me bring it here. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so I have here the script for the beginner solution. So here, the first line, we are just importing the required libraries. For this one, I'm using request for HTTP. Pandas, we know, is for the data wrangling. Math is to do some rounding calculations. And then time is because I'm introducing a delay when when doing the API calls between each page. I'm trying to introduce a delay. We were only getting 120 jobs in this example, but it's just a best practice when we are working with APIs to try to introduce a delay so we don't get blocked or anything when doing so many API calls. Here on the top, I have a configuration. This is optional. This is to construct here the the API call. I could have just type in here the host and the and yeah, like the host and the keywords, everything in here. But this is just to make it more functional and dynamic. If I wanted to go back and change the keyword, I could just simply go in here and type it in the keyword. Then put in my row limit of the 120 jobs. That's the maximum that I want to get. This timeout is in case there is an issue calling the API. We don't want to wait for too long to just timeout at the 15 seconds mark. And this is the sleep delay that I'm introducing when fetching each page. Then what I did, this is also optional. I know in the solutions that I saw, no one created an schema per se. This is completely optional. As I said, there is no wrong or correct way to do it. This is just simply my way. I wanted to have the exact schema that, yeah, I was going to be working on in Tableau. I wanted to ensure um, this is what I was going to receive. So I created this schema. These are the different columns that I was going to be working on in Tableau itself. The first one is that keyword term. Then we have the location, and this location is the one that we needed to be working on and parse, like get the city and state from this location. So I also added the raw field in my dictionary or my schema. Here we are just doing the doing the call to the API, and we have the timeout. Also, there is an auto error in case of receiving the 400 or 500 errors. And here you can see we are using requests instead of the HTTP client, which was suggested by the Jobble API example. So this is a simpler way to do it, or more effective way to do it. Here we start the main extraction loop. Here is where we are gonna hold the final list of lists, because you know that for Tableau to be able to see the data in this table format is not really in the, like, we cannot do a data frame, a simple data frame. We need to convert that into a list of lists. These scene IDs is what I use to like remove the duplicates. And this is something that, as I mentioned before, I kind of picked up from Lee, where he also introduced something to remove any duplicates. So I'm doing it with these scene IDs. And then here, this is also for, I'll show you in a second, pages to go. So here in my loop, it has to, it's gonna do two things. So it's going to loop when either it hits the last page, which I'm configuring here as page number 6, because each page um, returns by default 30 jobs. And you could actually configure this through the API to return more jobs, but by default it returns 6. But in this loop, what I'm doing is looping over when it either reaches to 6, the 6th page, or when it reaches the maximum of 120 jobs. And the way, or the reason why I'm doing that, is because here with this total count, you could initially get a count, like if you put a term, you can get the count of how many like jobs are there, like how many pages are there. And maybe the keyword that we were searching on only had like 90 jobs, like it doesn't go up to 20. So it doesn't make sense to loop over through all 6 pages if there are not jobs in pages 4 through 6. So this is looping over, and it stops when the first thing happens here. Here I'm casting the IDs into strings, and I mentioned that in the blog that IDs, I don't know why, sometimes come as negative numbers, and it was kind of weird. So to ensure that Tableau could read it correctly, we needed to cast it as a string. Here is where we are doing the job to skip any duplicates if the job ID was already seen before. Here is where it comes the parsing of the city and state. I know most of you did it very simple just by looking at the comma and just splitting the first term as the city and the second term as the state. That's completely fine. But what I found when I was testing this on my site is that some locations could contain multiple terms like commas. Also, there could be some locations that didn't have any comma at all. Like, for example, Washington, D.C. will come Washington space D.C. And I wanted to have a way to, like, be able to map those in Tableau. So I went ahead and did a little bit of extra work to parse the data. Like the first, obvious way to do it is just pick up the first term and the second term. But then what I did here was to check backwards, like, and this is for this scenario, like check backwards and see when it finds a two-letter code, and then define that as an state. So um, you know look at it backwards. If it finds these two letters, then that's the state, and then this becomes the city, and then excluding this term in here. Then I'm also doing a fallback when there is no comma between. So it will assign that as a city, and also at the end, I'm assigning that as a state. And this is just for Tableau purposes. So when I'm working in Tableau, I can maybe, if I'm doing a map, then if it's for example Washington D.C. and it doesn't find that as a valid city, I can manually in Tableau assign like Washington D.C. to Washington, and then go into state and also say Washington D.C. is Washington district capital or whatever that is. So I'm just doing some fallback so I never get nodes in Tableau and can have more complete information. Here I'm just appending the information received, and then it breaks when the 120 jobs are found. Here I'm introducing the delay of the 0.5 seconds and looping over again. And here I'm constructing the data frame. Also, I'm inputting like a default. If there are, like for some reason, no valid keyword or location is entered, return a row with like no jobs, or like something that is meaningful and not just empty in Tableau. And finally, we are returning this as a dictionary of lists, because mentioned before, this is the format that Tableau requests or requires. Okay, so that's the solution for the beginner. Now let me jump into the dashboard that I created for the um, intermediate challenge. So this is beginner. 1 second. This is the intermediate. So for the intermediate one, we needed a way to dynamically make calls to the API. So here we have the keyword and the location. So if I change this, let's say I'm gonna, instead of doing Boston, I'm gonna do Florida. And if everything works as expected, this should refresh. And then you can see how the jobs dynamically and right away are changing to Florida location. If I change my job here, let's say civil engineer, we should see now jobs related to civil engineering. So this is making the calls live to the API. Again, I'm always bringing the 120 jobs, and the only thing that changes in this intermediate challenge is that you need the custom SQL to be able to make these dynamic calls. And this custom SQL is like connected to the DocDB database. So in the blog, in the intermediate channel, I gave all the instructions how to install DocDB, how to, you need to copy a jar file into one of the Tableau directories. So there, all the instructions are in there, but you can see here I'm connected to this DB like lightweight SQL database. And in here, if we look at the custom SQL, very simple. I just created two parameters, one for keyword and one for location. So this is retrieving the information from those parameters and passing that to the API. So the script itself is pretty much the same, but it is just, let me think of, is the same. The only thing that we are introducing here is this argument one, and calling the keywords and the location. So this is the only thing that is pretty much changing. This argument one, this is what is picking up those parameters that we put in Tableau. Also, there is a default, like in case nothing is entered in the dashboard for a keyword or for a location, it has the default of Tableau and the location empty. Like I could have put Boston here or any other location, that's fine. This is just the default in case nothing is entering in the dashboard itself. But the logic here is pretty much the same. In here, you can see that it's pretty much calling, but what is changing here is calling this keyword and location. The dictionary or my schema now also has one more column, which is that search location, and this is just for the dashboard. But everything else is pretty much the same as the beginner challenge. So yeah, those are the solutions for the Table Extensions API. I don't know if you guys have any questions or any feedback or any comments. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm reading here all the comments. Thank you, Joshua. First time using table extensions, I learned a lot. So I'm glad, Joshua, that you learned a lot. I also learned a lot myself. So thank you so much. So I hope everyone enjoyed the challenge. And if you didn't have a chance to participate, please go back, try it out. I will upload the solutions and also the links to Joshua's, Lilu's, and Mohammed's, so you can compare and pick hidden, from different scripts and mix and match and just do what you think is the best.
Awesome. Thank you, Paola. I meant to start Q&A as you started, and I forgot. So if anyone in the chat does have questions for Paola and you want to throw them in Q&A, we'll take a look at those. Or, like she said, if you want to reach out later or review, certainly can do that as well. So thank you again, Paola. Really great stuff. I saw multiple people say this was their first time using table extensions, and you made it really easy and really approachable and kind of, I think, showed how powerful it is. So that's great. I'm glad so many people participated.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, then at this point, we are going to pass it over to Jordan to talk about the new challenges for this month. Jordan?
Jordan, you're mute.
Gets you every time, right?
There it is. There you go.
So what we're doing for this set of challenges is something that we haven't actually touched on yet. What we're going to use, what we're going to step into is the metadata API. So the metadata API is a slightly different way of accessing data on your Tableau server. It can tell you all sorts of interesting things that either isn't available in other portions of Tableau's various APIs or is harder to access. So as you go through this challenge, we have links to other, the official documentation, links to Anya. Anya has a great write-up on how to use the metadata API. I recommend looking at that. It uses a different kind of language called GraphQL. So you get a exposure to GraphQL using the metadata API. The beginner challenge is just something kind of simple. Pick a workbook on your site. Let's find that workbook, use the metadata API, and find some information about that workbook. The intermediate challenge takes it a step further. Now that you know how to do that and find the basic information, let's step up to actually applying filters. Let's pass in parameters. And Christian helped me sprinkle in an extra little challenge in there. If you want to find the workbook, you can then find what is that workbook connected to? What data sources is it pulling from? You can find that whole network using the metadata API. If you haven't used it before, I linked to this. I have screenshots in the article. But is it not switching tabs when I'm switching tabs? It's not switching tabs. Let's do so. Okay. So when you go to your site, there's a way to which is detailed in the challenge, right? If you go to external assets, query metadata with the graphical, right? You get to this screen, and this screen, it has your query right there, your output in the middle, and it even has the documentation on the right hand side. You can see every object available to you in the metadata API, what fields those objects have, and what the relationships are. This is a great challenge, a great tool to have in your tool belt, either if you're just a creator, or especially if you're a server admin or a site admin, figuring out how to find certain workbooks, certain data sources, and the relationship between things. Metadata API makes it really easy. Yeah, and as Christian said, right, there's details that you can only get about your workbooks through the metadata API, like your Viz portal IDs. Can't get that through the REST API. So metadata API is the way to do it.
All righty. Well, thank you for running us through the new challenges, Jordan. Let me share my screen again here. Uh-oh, where'd my slides go? Sorry. I had to reconfigure while you guys were going. Play from current slide. There we go. All right, entire screen. And there we go. All right. So that takes us to the end of the scheduled content for today's meeting. We're excited to see what you guys do with the new challenges. And we want you to join our DataDev community, right? I know it's really exciting to have so many first timers on this call today. We hope we've made a fan or a friend out of you. On the page here, who you're seeing now is our current cohort of DataDev ambassadors. The slide at the beginning that I showed you was our TUG leadership team, but we pull a lot of our inspiration from our larger DataDev community, so we want to give a shout out to all of those folks as well. And then again, down at the bottom, there is a Slack channel dedicated to DataDev. So many of you may be in the Tableau community Slack channel that launched around conference time of this year. Due to the nature of DataDev and some of the questions being a lot more technical, we actually kind of made the decision that we wanted to keep DataDev as its own Slack so that we could go into more in-depth conversations, make sure that there's good separation between things like people who are asking questions about the REST API probably don't want to be inundated with questions about embedding, unless you want all of it, but there's just a lot there. So we do have a Slack specifically for DataDev that we'd love to see you at. That is where the channel for DataDevQuest challenges lives. So if you want to join that, and like we said before, give us feedback, reach out to any of us, suggest a challenge. We'd love to hear from you on Slack as well. So I didn't mean to leave that animation in, but that is the end of the presentation here. So I'm seeing one more question in Q&A. Let's take a look. Oh, so Keith was asking the question. Oh, never mind. Sorry, he answered. Okay, that's really good to know and really encouraging. So just so that everyone knows, the question that was asked was, new to the group, new to DataDev, what challenge would you start with? Would you recommend starting with? It's a difficult question because it does depend a little bit on what your interests are. But then the most important thing, right, is each month our challenges have a beginner. We always try to do a beginner, and then we have an intermediate or an advanced. So if you are more on the beginner side and you're just trying to maybe find what you're good at or find what interests you when it comes to API and coding options with Tableau, just kind of browse through and filter by beginner and find one that sounds interesting to you. You may find that some of the beginners, based on your past experience, are too easy, and you can go straight to the intermediate. Or some of them, like maybe folks who have never used a table extension before or an analytics extension, like Paula showed earlier. Beginner, that's all going to be a lot of brand new stuff. So yeah, just take a look through. It's hard to tell. It's hard to give a good a one size fits all answer to that question, which is why we try to do something a little different each month. But again, if there are things you'd like to see us talk about or incorporate into a challenge, we definitely want to hear about that as well. So Paula, Jordan, Christian, anything to add before we wrap up today's meeting?
Only to add, Kyle, that the recording for the DataDev Day was published because they have like a time where it's not available. Now it's published. There is a lot of information. I share the link in the chat.
Oh, awesome. And I will make sure, thank you, Christian. I will make sure that when we post this video to YouTube, that it also includes the recording to DataDev Day. I didn't know the recording was out before the meeting, or I would have included a slide. But we'll make sure that it's published with this recording.
Yeah, was published a few days ago. No, not too much ago.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well then, we are at the end of our content here. But if anybody has any additional questions or comments, to go ahead and throw them in the chat or in Q&A or reach out on Slack. As always, we really appreciate everyone joining and participating. We do this because we have a passion for this and we want to share it with you. So it always feels great to have people join in on that. So if there's nothing else, everybody, thank you again so much for joining, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. And we will see you next month.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a good
Bye
day.
now.
Thanks, everyone.